Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, welcome. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carolina Arriagada Peters, and I am the Managing Director of Citizen Collaboration. I will be moderating the session today. Let me start by thanking WAIPA for their kind invitation to put this program together, and to the distinguished panel for sharing their experience with us, and for you for joining us. Today, we will be hearing about two leading IPAs about what they're doing to raising the game. You will then hear from a trade body driving change in Brussels and an international consultancy about their increasing role in the industry. This will be followed by a Q&A, so we invite you to type your questions in the chat. Finally, we will close the session with some reflections about the future of FDI. Let me start by introducing our formidable panel. Mr. Sorab Kadyrov is the Director of the Investment Promotion Department at Azerbaijan Export and Investment Promotion Foundation, ASPROMO. Mr. Aditya Narangayan, Vice President of Guidance in Tamil Nadu, India. Mr. Esteban Pelayo, Director of the European Association of Developing Agencies, EURADA. And Mr. David Slater, Director International and Head of UK-China Business at KPMG UK. I am delighted to have you here and grateful that you're sparing your time preparing for this capacity building workshop. The most recent WAIPA World Bank Global Survey on the state of investment promotions found that the most critical challenges are budgetary financial issues, bureaucratic challenges, and human capital. Indeed, 56% of IPAs from developing countries claim that human capital is a challenge. This number rises to 80% when it comes to IPAs in developed countries. This workshop will unpack capacity building, bring examples from around the world, and hopefully inspire other IPAs to explore new avenues to increase impact for FDI. Our first speaker comes from Azerbaijan in the Caspian Sea. Mr. Sorab Kadyrov began his career as economic and trade officer, shifted to banking, working for Unibank and the largest international bank of Unibank, and later the International Bank of Azerbaijan, the largest bank in the country. He also served as executive director at the Exporters Club and joined ASPROMO 2 years ago, where he directs the investment promotion department. Azerbaijan seeks to reduce the reliance on oil and gas revenues by diversifying its economy. Sorab, what's the plan for achieving this, and what role plays capacity building in those plans? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for your kind introduction. I would also very much like to thank WAIPA for this fantastic opportunity. When it comes to capacity building, when it comes to overall the function of IPAs, I think for Azerbaijan it's very important because on one hand, as you rightfully mentioned, there is an ongoing challenge with many issues, and of course, being in the country which produces oil, you always have this challenge to diversify non-oil sector, and of course, we're very strongly focusing on that issue as well. And the fact that you're bringing out budgetary and financial and human capital issues, I think in our case, human capital is very important because just like in any organization, just like you would be with the private business, I think with IPAs, it is also true that you should have a dedicated, not only staff, but like human capital in general, throughout the organization, throughout the country overall. This is a very, very important issue, and especially with us, since you're asking about our the developmental issues. I must say that, of course, we're looking at developing the country's non-oil potential both in terms of export promotion and investment attraction. And when it comes to investment attraction, we need to realize, we need to know very well what to promote. And we're promoting the country in general. And in order to promote the country, it's not enough just to speak about, where the country is located, what's its major sources of revenue, and you know, other general type of information. You need to have talented people for sure, but you also need to have some, if I may put it this way, not tech savvy, but like, you know, technically very prepared persons and people in places, in the right places, in order to provide all type of requests that may be arising, because these requests may be arising in regards to different areas of the economy. And in order to be able to respond to that, you need to have some expertise, you need to have some experience, and you need to be able to provide the answers that are being sought, because we know that in the current world, the role of education is huge, but at the same time, and I think knowledge that is acquired from universities, from conventional methods, are like is outdated very rapidly. And the only way to actually provide the expertise and knowledge is by means of you know, constant work in the areas that you are representing. So that's why this is very important. Azerbaijan is a very interesting case. It's a very beautiful country that had to go through a lot of challenges, and a lot is being done by the top leadership of the country, and we're working on, like I said, on enhancing image of the country, inclusive for foreign investors. Of course, the work over the image is performed on many levels. When it comes to us, to local IPA, we're working with foreign investors to provide more information about the country itself, the opportunities it's providing, value proposition on the specific sectors, and on many other issues. If that is answering your question, Carolina, I'm happy. If I need to proceed further, please let me know.
As an investment banker, you know what the quality of service, client service is. How are you applying that expertise into investment promotion?
Well, I think my banking experience is more related to commercial banking, but nevertheless, you're right. You're right, because at banks, and I think with large institutions who are serving clients, not only the banks, it is very important to have a customized private banking type of relationship with the clients, let's put it this way, because in our case, we're talking about investors who may be considered as clients. And of course, in this regards, there is a lot to borrow from the banks, because within the banks, when you work with private customers, private bank clients, there are very good practices and techniques developed. And I think that's what we are borrowing from that sector, and we're trying to apply to the investors that we're working with. Of course, there is always the list of the investors who are existing in the country, and we follow this list closely, and we cooperate with the current investors in the country, and we try to provide them with the customized services, whether their issues are related, you know, to their current business, to their prospective opportunities, to some challenges they are facing in Azerbaijan, or to anything else. We are trying to stay in touch with them, certainly not on the daily basis, but at least on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We're trying to touch the grounds and see what's happening with the needs of the investors in the country. So yes, you're absolutely right. We need to be working with them, and we are working with them on a regular basis.
This leads fantastic to a question of aftercare, which is a topic, as you know, I'm very dear of. I wrote a book about this, in fact. How do you see that relationship with clients in the post-investment phase taking place in Azerbaijan?
Well, first, I heard about the book, and it'd be very, very good to read it, actually. So I plan to do so sometime soon. But when it comes to aftercare, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think in many cases, IPAs are focusing largely on investment promotion, and this is sort of naturally leading you to investment promotion among new investors who have never been to your country. And in many cases, we, when I say we, I mean IPAs, would tend to forget sort of about the existing investors on the ground, which we should not do in any case, because we need to be working with them very closely. We've been monitoring international statistics, and it shows that it actually is telling you that around 50% of the new investments into the country are performed by the existing investors, by the investors who are already there on the ground. So it's very important for us to work with them. That's why I was talking previously about the customized approach to work with the existing foreign direct investors in Azerbaijan. So we try to apply sophisticated and modern aftercare techniques, including, I think, policy advocacy, which I perceive to be a very important part of aftercare, because when you work with the investors on a regular basis, you tend to know of their challenges and in some cases problems. And in some cases, when you solve some of their problems, you may realize that similar type of issues may be faced by other investors. So the good way to avoid this in future would be proposing some changes to legislation or some other normative acts. And that's where policy advocacy kicks in. And I think it's a very, very crucial and important part of aftercare.
Indeed, it's in post-investment where you have the conversation with clients which help you to improve their competitiveness, because FDI, it's a competitive industry. On that front, how do you link FDI with exports in a country like Azerbaijan?
It's a very good question. First of all, you're absolutely right. It's extremely competitive area, FDI attraction. And not only due to the fact that there are as many IPAs, national IPAs, as there are countries in the world, but also because there are regional IPAs and their number is tending to grow constantly. And also, apart from this, there are IPAs based on commercial basis, because in many cases, these are not budget funded, these are self-established and successful institutions, which I can only appreciate. I think if an IPA is dealing, working on a commercial basis and it's successful, this is just great. When it comes to your question, how FDI is related to export, I think that FDI promotion strategy that we have developed along with IFC, and which is very close to its beginning of execution, we were looking at several major opportunities in FDI attraction, such as development, promotion of natural resources within the country, promotion of FDI, focusing on the local market, on some local brand produced here. But I think we chose, and we almost had no other choice but to choose the option of bringing in the FDI focusing on export, simply because Azerbaijan is a nation of 10 million people, and the internal market cannot be considered satisfying to every type of foreign investors. That's why they need to take a look at the surrounding markets, and the surrounding market is quite interesting, quite significant. Azerbaijan possesses FTA, free trade agreements, with many neighboring countries, and that's why it's increasing this its 10 million market to much more significant numbers of around 300 million people covered by FTAs. That's why export orientation, it's not a privilege. I think it's almost something you must do, because otherwise attractiveness of the country may be going down. So yes, export is there, and the export component within FDI attraction is extremely important.
Fantastic. What's about the new territories that you have? How is that being weaved into the FDI strategy?
It is a very good question. Thank you, first of all, for mentioning this. As you might be aware, Azerbaijan liberated its significant part of its territory from occupation that was occupied for 30 years. And now, it is a very important priority for the country to reunite, to reintegrate these territories into the economic activity. I'll give you some information that currently the state of those territories is such that nothing is, no buildings, no nothing, no infrastructure survived into those territories. I mean, within the 30 years, they've been completely demolished. And I'm bringing this fact to you in order to understand that there on those territories, we may have a completely new start. And that the government is already doing a lot there. Within the tenor of less than 1 year from freeing from occupation, we not only managed to build, but also to put into exploitation our 7th international airport there. So there is a fully functioning airport that already has a status of international in the occupied territories. And more is yet to come. New industrial zones, new industrial parks are already being built there. Infrastructure is in place. What I was referring to when I said that nothing survived there, it is actually creating new opportunities to start building something from scratch. And the idea of smart cities and the idea of smart villages can be and would be implemented in those areas, because this is the goal that government is, the top leadership of the country is putting in front. We would be developing these areas in accordance with the most sophisticated and modern standards, inclusive, keeping in mind alternative energy and the green environment. So that's our top priority, I would say, reintegration of those territories. Thank you again, Carolina, for bringing this out.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. We learned that FDI is learning from private bankers to increase the quality of the service when engaging with client, and take note, weekly or bi-weekly contact. That's a standard you're putting there in the industry. Having the right stuff in the right place. And of course, bringing opportunities when linking trade and investment, which is a long debate in the industry, and happy to see that you are capitalizing on that opportunity. There is clearly a topic on speed of change, particularly around this opportunity of creating a new strategy completely from scratch in terms of FDI for the growth of the country. So we wish you really all the best in that, and want to continue learning from your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Our second speaker comes from Tamil Nadu in India. Mr. Aditya Narangayan brings a career in communications, working on Hill and Knowlton Strategies India and public affairs and advocacy at Genesis Burston Marsteller. He moved to the Andhra Pradesh Economic Development Board, where he designs a roadmap for investment attraction. Later, he joined Tamil Nadu in 2019, where he leads investment attraction. Aditya, Tamil Nadu is the second largest economic powerhouse in India. It is home to 37,000 factories, the highest concentration in that country. It has a diversified manufacturing sector with strong industries, automotive, pharmaceuticals, textile, chemicals. What is the secret for that success? The floor is yours. Aditi, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. One question that you can attribute that is that since India, even prior to about 500 to 1,000 years, Tamil Nadu was still a trading house. So you had an access to port-led development since a long period of time. But if you look at the growth story of India from 1991, when the liberalization, privatization, globalization reforms had come, Tamil Nadu captured on that on that wave pretty soon. One of the reasons why we can attribute to the success of this growth is, number one, is that there was adequate competition between both the political parties that came into power. There was a pragmatic effort to sustain that level of investment activity since the last 30 years. So if you look at 91 to 2015, we've been growing at a cumulative average of 7% since the past 30 years. So there has been a consistent growth paradigm where both the chief ministers of the state used to compete with each other for driving on investment. That's number one. Number two, what we see is that the culture of Tamil Nadu's bureaucracy is and its institutions are par excellence. So this one of the reasons can be attributed to a steady shift in bureaucracy working with each other. The third one is also the entrepreneurial base that has been captured in the country in Tamil Nadu since a long period of time. That's number one. And also its emphasis on export-led development, because we're number 3 in India with respect to exports. So I think exports form a major thrust of our strategy. Also, this twin inclusive development and industrialization together is what has created Tamil Nadu to that strength. And of course, the knowledge and skill capabilities of the state is also a worthy mention to see how we've upped the ante in terms of developing the state as an industrial powerhouse.
During the research of the book, I really was impressed by the use of technology in Tamil Nadu. Can you share us a little bit about that?
So to be frank, Tamil Nadu has always been a technology powerhouse since time immemorial. But however, recently what we've done is we've taken steps to augment the use of technology for investment promotion. Prior to 2009, what we've also done is today every database on every investor in the state is linked towards a dashboard which talks about when the investor has come, what has he spoken to, when has he, what sites in Tamil Nadu has he visited, what investments he's gone to, what incentives he's got. So that dashboards we've been created. But more than that, what we've done is we've done on 2 platforms. One is close to about 100 approvals, licenses and clearances are all digital online. So the investor need not go to each department to avail of licenses and clearances. That one single window can probably be done. So right now about 100 of those licenses, approval, clearances are online. Another 100 are going to be added in the next 6 months. So that's one way we're kind of making it faceless and paperless. So I think that's an effort to make it more technology oriented. Also, all our land records, all the land details are all online. So an investor can probably go and access industrial land and agricultural land online. So we've done everything online. One of the commendable things I'd like to mention is the BizBuddy. Usually what happens is it's a very cultural context in India where investors do not want to go to government departments and tell them their problems. So what we've done is we've created this platform called BizBuddy, where investors could go and give them their query of their problems without naming themselves. They could also name the company. So what we've seen is we've seen an 80% reduction in timely solving all their problems and solving them. So because of BizBuddy, a lot of people are writing what their problems are and the department which they're facing the problem in that particular thing. So it has an automatic escalation process which actually escalates to the senior management if the problems are not escalated. So I think this is one of the ways we're trying to assist. So far we've got about 78% of cases we've solved, specifically investor queries through BizBuddy, but otherwise we wouldn't have known, because, and as a cultural context in India, people would not like to come and say that the government is not helping me, or there's a delay in decision making or file process moving. So I think this is one way we've kind of assisted investors through that.
You know, in my practice, I've learned that there are two types of investors: those who find everything perfect and those who find everything wrong. So introducing technology into that really helps to see what and learn what investors really want to do and what they need in order to grow. Because investment attraction and retention and expansion is all about growth. An investor comes to your country to grow. And this is an area that also puzzles me. How do you support companies grow locally?
Okay. So see, Tamil Nadu anyway has a vibrant local industry. So those 30 out of those 37,000 factories, are probably about 26,000 would be local companies. So what we do is we help. So what we've seen that if there's an increase in FDI, if there are foreign companies or companies from other countries that actually come in, a lot of local industry gets developed on their own. So that's one way where we don't have to do much, but I think the market and the demand and supply dynamics of the market, it takes care of itself. One more thing that's concerning the government of Tamil Nadu is that because of the onslaught of the Industry 4.0 and Industry 4.0 and automation, I think what we're also doing is we're going forward to work with the World Economic Forum and other technology bodies to see what will be the change, because tomorrow these factories have to automate, these factories have to move up the ladder. I think that's a bigger challenge that we're facing today, because if you look at 45% of our industry is exports in the automobile sector, for example, because the internal combustion engine is moving to an EV powertrain. Tomorrow we see about 600 to 800 suppliers per automobile company can probably lose their job. So we'll be kind of seeing what is this going to make, how are we going to reflect this and assist companies to move to the next level of growth. I think that's important, because Industry 4.0 is definitely going to come, and I think that's a bigger challenge for us, actually.
You were telling me that there was a political turmoil some years ago in Tamil Nadu, and that somehow this changed the way you see FDI. Could you please explain this a little bit more?
I wouldn't. Okay, so by political turmoil, as in there was succession issues within the local government in terms of politics. But at that time, it also coincided with Prime Minister Modi coming into power, where the whole Make in India scheme had been launched. So more than a political turmoil, I think a lot of states got competitive. So I think that phase between 2014 to 2018, I think we lost a lot of manufacturing investments, specifically to states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and specifically IT investments, ITES investments to say Telangana and Karnataka. So there was a conscious need to redevelop and re-energize the investment promotion agency. So I think in 2018 they decided that you will have to strengthen this board as to be more lean and mean and hire more talented people. I'm just not talking about myself, but yeah. So.
Talent is what drives change and what drives really the growth and attraction. You speak about a lot of changes. Where did you find the talent, the budget to pay for all this?
Okay, no. So to a very larger extent, I think it's not very expensive because our budgets. We still have a lot of budgets to go through. I think the budget was not a problem, but partly what we've decided is that by actually doing all this in-house, like for example, our investment promotion, our sector teams for investment promotion is in-house. Our international international outreach team is in-house. We have an in-house policy team. We have an in-house marketing and communications team. So what we've done is we've actually saved a lot of money, because we've we've done all this in-house. At the same time, we retain consultants because we do not have to lose the extra knowledge that we might not get from the market. So I think we've done this, but to a larger extent, what we've done, I don't think the budgets are seemingly a problem, because it's much more cheaper to hire 5 resources than put an ad in, say, a national newspaper, though. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm underpaid, but yeah, I mean, there's scope for that.
No, but it's a matter that the fact that you can introduce technology really helps you to liberate some budgets. Bringing teams in-house also changes the way you can grow and run campaigns.
Correct. See, one more thing that we've also seen, thanks to COVID, is that we kind of using the whole the WebEx and tools like Zoom and communication. So it's also helped us to actually save time and energy in traveling and bringing resources back home. To give you an example, there was a German company called ICOF, which was a wind turbine manufacturer. We used the entire technology platform to actually get him to invest in Tamil Nadu without he even looking at land parcels in Tamil Nadu. We negotiated the entire incentives on Zoom and digital platforms. So he had come to sign an MOU and see the land and see the construction. He's like, this is the first time I've done it, because he's never been to India. So I think it's also helped us in that way, where we're able to seamlessly use technology to assist investors. So we took drone shots of the land and we sent it to him and said, this is how it's going to be. So I think it's been a very different experience for us doing that also.
That's where we're all heading. So great to hear that you are really seeing the results of what a digital WAIPA is all about. True. So Tamil Nadu is certainly a reference and guidance, is teaching us so much. How many WAIPAs have a dashboard of the engagement with the clients, where they can see incentives, which sites they visit, etc. I'm sure that many of the audience will be envious about what you have there. Of course, this capacity of VisBuddy, this technology that helps you to solve problems and address them on time and avoid escalation, which is really one of the most important part. In the research of the book, it also came out that escalation is a risk which properly managed really saves time and money, retains the investor, and saves the country bigger investor-state disputes. So managing that part is really important. And this capacity of future looking at the industry and forging partnerships at international level in order to see what's happening out there and how the industry needs to change is something that really will shine a path to other WAIPAs of what to do. Thank you so much, Aditya. We will come back to technology later on.
Please.
Our third speaker is based in Brussels. Mr. Esteban Pelayo is an agricultural engineer and trademark attorney with a career in knowledge transfer, intellectual property licensing, and innovation, and a decade at the Regional Development Agency Murcia, Spain. He joined URADA in 2015 as a director and is a well-known advocate for RDAs, representing their voice, the voice of the 66 members from 21 countries in Brussels. Esteban, an OECD study noted that promotion agencies interact on average with 25 different organizations, yes, to deliver their mandate. And on top of that, they have all the industry-specific organizations to help projects. How do you see all this ecosystem interaction taking place in Europe, and how does it fuel investment? The floor is yours.
Thank you for the question, because it's quite relevant. I'm going to say you briefly, when I see that, I see a lot of missing opportunities and fragmentation in Europe, but I am not pessimistic, and you will discover in the next few minutes. It's because of the challenge that we are facing. In Europe, the European Union nowadays is 27 countries, and we have 242 regions. And despite the internal market, we know the internal market of 445 million, which is one of the things that help us to continuous grow and to overcome challenge and crisis that like the one we are facing these days. still there are many things to do, many things to do, because we all know that the main places of economic growth in the world is still Asia, and there are many opportunities in America or in Africa, and we are lagging behind, and there we have to put effort. And the European Union is a nice construction, and let me tell you, because there are things that has done well. I am not working for the European Union institution, I close to them, so I could criticize and say the good things. And one of the good things that they have is that they have what we call cohesion policy, where they spend 1/3 of the budget, of the total budget of the European Union there. It means around 70,000 billion per year. So in total is more than 242 in the 7 periods. So we normally have the budget for 7 periods, 21, 27, and we will 242. This help a lot to use what are the lagging behind regions and to foster collaboration. And there, the topic of this seminar is quite relevant, because one of the things that we have invented is what we call smart specialization strategies, where we say that not every region is the same. Not every region has to invest in material laboratories or in biotechnology or in nanotechnology or in artificial intelligence. We have to find ourselves where we are and where we should invest. And with these funds, we are fueling them, but needs a lot of capacity building, not only in our territories, which is supported by these funds, but as well in the people who are taking the decision, because we need to establish a common vision in every region to know where we are going and where we are going to use these funds. And for that, we need leadership, and the development agencies, the WAIPAs, and all the public entities that are connected with the industry and the economic growth need to have the relevance and the authority to bring all together, the private and the public, in order to do that. And for that, it's quite relevant to have skilled people inside of our organization, and to be permanently updated on the needs and the capacity of their territories. As well, if I'm going to say just one example, as well, if you allow me, the European Union has other things connected with research and innovation, digitalization, and I'm going to put you one example very good of things that can support. One of our members, the Lyon Invest in Lyon, Adderley, has a project together with Berlin partners and Rotterdam partners that is called Talent, supported by the European Commission. And they discussed this is an example, during 2 years, how to attract talent, how to retain talent in their territories. And the most important thing is not the money, because it's 50,000 euros for the 3 entities, and they have a lot of resources. But at least it's like a small carrot where you could divert people to sit, to think during 2 years with colleagues that at the end are competitors, because the companies that go to Rotterdam or to Berlin don't go probably to Lyon, but at least this is the cooperation and the good things that the European Union have to avoid fragmentation and to don't lose so many opportunities.
Opportunities in collaboration, and clearly this links perfectly well with what you mentioned the other day about communities of practice in terms of innovation. Do you want to share one of those examples?
Well, Eurada has 30 years, and we were almost 30 years next year, and we were created because of that, because of the challenge. One of the best examples that we did since I am the director is connected with a disaster in a place close to Brussels in the south. Charleroi is a former coal and steel province, and they recover somehow, and they have one of the factories is from Caterpillar, producing big machinery. However, you know, in Europe, we provide many grants and subsidies in order to change the companies, and we provide, the provincial government provide, 10 years ago, provide some funds to license the people with more experience inside of the company. But 2 years or 3 years after these changes, they decide that they had to close and move the production to another region in France. So they were losing of 2,500 direct employments and 2,500 indirect employment in a small village of 100,000. It was a disaster. And it was bigger, a disaster, because this company comes from the States, so the lawyer says, you don't have to cooperate with the public administration. We didn't know which are the indirect employment because we didn't know the providers to support. There were announcements in the journal saying, if you are a provider, a company provider of Caterpillar, contact us because we will help you, is what the development agency said in that moment. And as well, there was a political crisis because we give a lot of money, the development agency give a lot of money. So in that moment, what we came is the community of practice. Thank you very much, Carolina, because we said, this is not the last company that closed in Europe, and unfortunately will not be the last one. So there are a lot of experience of public entities doing the same thing. So we organize with all the main stakeholders in the province. We organize a session with people that have faced similar situations in different places, in Finland, in the Netherlands. Philips, now we all see Philips, but Philips has their crisis in the 90s and they closed a truck factory. In my home country, in Spain, in Andalusia, we have disaster connected with natural disaster and things like that. And we have a true workshop with speakers coming from there and tell them honestly what to do and what not to do. I remember, for example, the one from my home country that took over, bought the company, and this was the first thing that they said to them. Don't become a public manufacturer of trucks or lorries because you will be a disaster. This is something that has to come from the private. This type of things. So honestly, what to do and what not to do. This is an example of community of practice that we normally do. And the conclusion is that everybody has to have a contingency plan for the big factories in their territories to at least to have the first step that you should do in case of a crisis.
Fantastic example, Esteban, and thank you so much for sharing that. In the research for the book, it highlights that less than 10% of WAIPAs have a contingency plan, less than 10%. And we know that the crisis will come, whether it's political, natural, COVID, etc. So it's really important to put that in the agenda of WAIPAs, and that at least it comes in the strategy. And put a page, but have a contingency plan. It's really important to have that. And also we learned that 1 in 4 companies will leave during the period of the investment. So how are you retaining them? And this goes to all the aftercare topic that we have discussed before. A question that I see is coming is about the interaction or difference or similarities between RDAs and WAIPAs. How do you see that?
Yeah, the thing is, Europe is diverse. We saw that, I said that this was 242 countries. In many places, the development agency, the regional development agency and the investment promotion agency is the same. They have a different name, but it's the same entity that allows. However, let's think in the most complex context where we have different entities doing different things. In that case, the collaboration is very evident because the promoters are the same. There is a public, at least in Europe, there is a public promoter behind. Then the WAIPAs is more in the marketing approach and the supporting the attraction of investors, and the development agency is more in the supporting the infrastructure to go to connect with the people that are already in the territory and set up business incubator, technology parks, technopoles, or even logistic infrastructure, and supporting with the programs to grants for innovation. And then what we have normally, and this is, you know, Europe is diverse, but normally we have someone that is in charge of the investors' relation when they arrive during the first years, and then later this account manager comes and goes to the development agency. However, and I must say, I tell you always the bottle, not half empty, not half full. We still need a lot of support in the scale up of companies. So there is a good attraction but the things that you said before, the aftercare and the things that we had to do once the investment is done and has established really, and don't forget that, don't keep doing and keep supporting them as they were going to leave in the next year, or they have already come. This is the main issue. So it's to scale up companies continuously in order to have a good connection.
And what are the main projects that your members are focusing on right now?
Mainly they are involved in digitalization and in climate change. As you know, probably there is a common vision in the European Union where the climate technology and climate service is not only something beneficial for us as a society, but is the competitive advantage of Europe. We think that we are, compared with the rest of the world, we are better on that. So they are reinforcing that. For example, the recovery funds of the coronavirus, a huge mobilization of money coming from the European Union, at least 30% of the funds should be connected with climate. So this is where they are investing. And as well in digitalization, there we are lagging behind. We have some good approaches, because at the end Europe is a place of SMEs. So there are many SMEs very innovative with their platform, but we are not in the big numbers, and still there is a room for digitalization in order to be more competitive. So this is the second option, to try to foster in digitalization in traditional industries. And for that, the European Union has established what we call Digital Innovation Hub, that will be one-stop shop center that are connected on working distance with all the companies in that territory, and has the role to supporting them, to be their first laboratory, to lead proactively, and to support, to help them to digitalize. So these are the two main priorities of the members.
And do those centers work as a local one-stop shop like we do in FDI, or is it more representing Europe locally?
No, it's bottom up. It's locally and has not been created ex novo. They are just connecting people. And as well, I like very much, again, the first question of ecosystem, Carolina, is crucial. What they are doing, in reality, coming from Europe, is with the name of European Digital Innovation Hub, is gathering all the actors that are really working in digitalization and having a unique image in the territory. And they have the responsibility as well to connect with others in Europe. And I'm going to give you an example. So imagine that a company is very much concerned about artificial intelligence, but the Digital Innovation Hub in their territory, they don't have so good knowledge on that, because they are more connected with other things like cloud computing or Internet of Things. So the local centers should have to know who is in Europe close to them, able to provide this support service. And the collaboration is full with the funds of the European Union, but the main part, the running costs of this, are carried out by the local authorities and the regional authorities. I think it's a good idea. It's starting now, to be honest. So it's one of the plans that you asked me about what are the priorities. It's starting, the Digital Innovation Hub as such is a concept that has 3 or 4 years and is implementing now in the program of Digital Europe. But I have, because I see things, we have a lot of trust in what is going to happen. I told you that I am positive as well, not only pessimistic.
Thank you so much, Esteban. We are all positive about the future, and hearing that there is a rule or regulation that will allocate 30% of the funds to climate change really injects hope and an opportunity for further collaboration for the big challenges. So thank you so much for that. And let's move to our fourth speaker, who knows a little bit about Europe. Mr. David Slater is a British career diplomat. He was based in the West Coast of USA, in India, and now in London. Prior to that, he was responsible for Foreign and Commonwealth Office policy relating to the UK's relationship with the European Union institutions and changes to the European Union's treaties. A former FDI practitioner, he led investment attraction for London and Partners, the Mayor of London's Economic Development Agency. At KPMG UK, David oversees international business from the USA, Japan, China, Germany, Switzerland, and the Gulf. He also advises them about how to take advantage of international trade and investment opportunities. David, how do you see consultancies fit into the WAIPA investor landscape? The floor is yours.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, Carolina. It's great to see you again. What I'm going to try and do, I'll split my remarks into 5 areas, take a minute or so on each, and then let's see if we can spark some more questions from the audience. So the first area, I think, is what is our relative influence over investment decisions? It's important for all of us, and particularly for public bodies, and I've got a public body background, to understand our relative influence over a business's investment decision. We all know that politicians will always want to claim responsibility for every successful investment decision, and that's fine, take that as read. But in my view, it really helps the effectiveness of an IPA to be clear on the role that they play. All the research that I've seen shows that investors rate IPAs as only the 9th or 10th most important influence on their decision. Much more influential are more granular economic issues, the domestic market potential, proximity to wider markets, access to skills, regulatory environment, business environment, cost of doing business, infrastructure, digital, etc., quality of life. And in these areas, there are lots of expertise in the professional services community. In fact, it's the core business for many consultants and advisors. So my observation is that it's the ability to communicate accurate and credible market information that counts for an IPA, and it's less about the pure sales ability. In fact, if you oversell a location, it comes back to bite you. So I think there's a mutually beneficial relationship between IPAs and consultants in that area. Second area is about key factors that drive investment decisions. I did some research for the British government recently comparing policy issues that attract foreign investment. The most common policies are tax-based incentives, tax holidays, preferential rates, or in developed markets, incentives like research and development credits, capital investment allowances. The key issue for me here is that international tax is an extremely complex topic, and any business's tax position is a global consideration, not a country or regional one. Therefore, when assessing an investment opportunity, most businesses are going to need international tax advice. Sometimes they've got it in-house, but more often they'll need to reach out to an external advisor. Most IPAs are public bodies. They're not able to offer tax, legal, or other regulatory type advice. And frankly, I don't think they should. I think it's a conflict of interest in many areas. So working alongside advisory firms, in my view, adds considerable value to the ability of an IPA to discuss investments with their clients. My third area is about the reassurance, in my experience, that businesses take from talking to other private sector bodies and advisory firms. Everyone in this seminar well understands that foreign direct investments are global business. As Zorab said, every nation, region, state, city's got an IPA, and their job is to promote their specific area in front of anywhere else. I know of 6 cities in the UK that claim to be the leading city for life sciences. I could probably name 30 across Europe and 200 across the world. And Esteban talked about this, the competition between IPAs. All of these IPAs can evidence or can provide some evidence to back their claim. It just depends on how the data is presented. And this is a real issue for investors. How do they benchmark the various claims and draw an objective conclusion in the best long-term interests of their business when they're bombarded with all this competing information? Most businesses that I talk to have got a healthy respect for government and public bodies, absolutely, but they have a healthy skepticism of government data, even when it's sourced by an independent third party. And they know there's no comeback if the government data is later found out to be not quite as objective as they once thought. So this is where advisory firms such as mine can really help. Investors expect business advisors in their employment to provide high quality analysis, objective advice. If it's regulated advice like legal or accountancy, then there are rules governing its objectivity. And in my experience, investors at some point need that type of advice to provide reassurance whenever they're contemplating an investment decision. So they expect people like us to have a much better understanding of how their business operates than would any other public body, particularly one that exists to promote a particular area or region. Now, that's not trying to denigrate anything that IPAs do. It's just a fact of my experience of how businesses think. Therefore, again, I think there's this mutually supporting role that can be developed between IPAs and advisory firms. And in my view, the best IPAs know how to use advisory firms to support their wider objectives without anyone having to compromise their objectivity. Fourth area, very quickly, is to give you a couple of examples of where I've seen this happening. Quite recently, we've supported the Make in India campaign. We've worked with 2 states in northern India, Punjab, Haryana, to help the state governments to devise an investment promotion strategy. We've done a competitive analysis that recommended some regulatory simplification, improving the ease of doing business. We've helped with some research on targeting potential investors, and we've supported prospective investors with information to help them make an objective decision. So that's one area. Second area, very personal to me, I'm advising a major European listed business to assess whether their preferred city location is right for them. This includes an assessment of the political environment. You'll not be too disappointed to know that there's a question about the impact of the UK's departure on from the European Union, Brexit, the availability of skilled labour, the cost of doing business, the availability of office space, and the overall value for money of a particular destination. And in this instance, I've reached out to the local IPA. I've asked for their data and information because I want to give the potential investor the best possible advice I can using all sources. So I'm working in tandem with the local IPA. And the third example, which was a failure, I know you don't get many consultants come on and say we failed, but I failed on this because what I was asked to do was help an IPA promote their region and provide help implementing a strategy that had been devised by someone else. And in the end, the real ask was, can you bring us warm leads? This is really difficult for a regulated entity or a Big Four consultancy firm because it gets in the way of our ability to provide objective advice to the client if we're in a paid role promoting a particular area. So that's where it doesn't quite work. So to conclude, my fifth theme really is, I think the relationship between an IPA and an advisory firm can be mutually supporting. There's value to both sides and to the economic development of any region and to the long-term success of investors. Where I really see the value in IPAs using consultancies is helping to develop and perfect the proposition, providing comparisons to help develop the most competitive proposition possible for a particular area, helping IPAs understand how businesses think and the strength of their proposition. How many times have I seen a British government brochure that talks about how wonderful the UK is, but it hasn't been written with the audience of a prospective investor in mind. It's been written with an internal audience in mind. It's no use. We can interpret the views of current investors. It was a point that was made earlier that I think Aditya made it in terms of the reluctance of businesses talking direct to government about their problems. Well, advisors talk to businesses all the time. If you're the tax advisor, you're talking to them constantly. Think about how talking to consultancies and tax advisors can help bring trends that can help shape economic development policy in a particular region. And to finish on Aftercare, because I know it's close to your heart, if we're talking to businesses all the time, we are interested in their growth. The truth is that we will earn far more money as a business, purely selfishly, by helping businesses to grow in a particular area than we ever would being in the employ of an IPA to promote the region. So it's in our interest to help investors to grow in a particular region in the same way that is an IPA. So if you can work in tandem together, you can see the benefits on both sides. I'll stop there and hand back to you, Carolina.
Thank you so much, particularly outlining the complexity of investment attraction and also the depth of knowledge that investors need in order to really make a decision. You are working directly with clients. Are there any new trends in terms of their needs that you have picked up in your work?
It depends on which part of the world, really. So if you look at Europe, obviously the UK's exit is an issue. It's an issue for people that are already in the UK. It's an issue for people that are trading across that new customs border between the UK and the rest of the European Union. It's an issue in Ireland. So there's lots of advice around customs controls, import duty, value-added tax. All these things have changed. So a lot more very technical requests on how to do particular things. More widely, the current sort of tension between China and the US, you know, there's been trade wars, there's sanctions, there are all sorts of disruptions to the global supply chain. The analysis of that is really important. Our supply chain practice is growing faster than just about any other part of the business, because businesses need to really understand and not get caught out as they did in COVID, when a single country supplying a very vital component can completely break a business if that supply is somehow disrupted, whether it be the closure of the factories because of COVID or whatever it is. So very technical and specific advice on that. And then there is always talk about what technology should we be investing in that gives us the best possible competitive advantage. And I think that is the key trend, and it links very closely to the ESG agenda, you know, the environment, the governance and society agenda, which is top of everybody's mind as we go to COP26. And there's an awful lot of businesses wanting to ensure that as they produce ESG strategies and produce ESG agendas, that it's being assured and audited by professional firms to make sure that they're delivering on what they claim to deliver.
Thank you for that. Nearshoring, it's a big topic in the investment industry, and there are many question marks around that. Let me speak to the diplomat in you. And do you see diplomacy playing a role in where nearshoring is going?
Well, I think nearshoring is now much more of a reality than it is an academic theory. It's been talked about a lot over the years, and I haven't really seen it. I think the disruption of supply chains that I talked about earlier has meant that businesses are now much more focused on nearshoring than they perhaps have been in the past. A good example would be automotive components being made in Morocco for the European market, which I wasn't sure was anything other than a pipe dream not so long ago. I think it's the thing. The diplomat in me says that you know, it's easy to create policy in isolation from reality. Maybe that's not so diplomatic, but you get the idea. It's really important that as theories and ideas come out, that they are tested really vigorously and rigorously with A, businesses, and B, as every global business has got multiple advisors, the advisory community can really help kick the tires and test any strategy, whether it be nearshoring, whether it be investment promotion, whatever it is. And I think that's the key thing. I think it's the willingness of government to go out and consult properly and be willing to learn from the advice that they're getting, rather than it fitting very neatly into a policy position that maybe has already been agreed and decided.
Thank you so much, David. Clearly, there is nearshoring is a topic that we are going to see moving forward, and it also poses a question in terms of skills, in the sense that regions and locations need to acquire the new skills in order to attract that new investment. Thank you so much. This leads to the next topic of our presentation today, which is skills. Our research interviewing hundreds of practitioners and scanning thousands of job descriptions revealed that there are 5 key skills to pursue a career in this industry, in FDI. 5 key skills. These are Number one, business development, which is about client engagement, but also about industry expertise. And I know you're very well familiar with that, and develop plans in order to develop that skill in your WAIPAs and locally. The second skill is analytical mindset. And this is where it starts a little bit of a challenge, because it's not about reading data or reading charts, but about reading the situations of the industry, reading expectations, reading the not said, for example, what Tamil Nadu said about investors not talking. So reading situations and really putting plans in place around those situations. So analytical mindset. The third one is about navigating the ecosystem, and essentially is moving in a changing context. So moving your operation, your agenda in a moving environment. So this tension of constantly changing targets that you need to chase, or changing scenarios, politics, etc., is a skill that is not really well developed, and we don't have an educational system to work around uncertainty. But we know it's needed. COVID showed that. The fourth skill is political acumen. Whilst investment promotion agencies are technical, not political, in theory, so at least, you need to have a skill around government, how they work, how regulations are made in order to influence them, but also about elections, votes, and constituency. This is something New York showed us all too well when Amazon decided to put their HQ there, only to see their project rejected by the local community. And the fifth skill is location storytelling, which is around articulating agendas that convene. London has a very good tagline on that, is we are here to tell the London story brilliantly. This is a skill that is of increasing importance in investment attraction, particularly because of this changing environment and this need to articulate and convene agendas in order to bring collaboration and really create value together. I would like to open now to my panelists with a question. Do you see these skills taking place or present in your practice, and what plans do you have to develop it? Let me start with Saurabh. Would you like to share your view about that?
Yes, you mean on the skills issue, right?
Yes, please.
Well, what you mentioned about 5 major skills, I think in part I already touched on that issue, and in part I also agreed that it is interesting when somebody, classifies it like this, like it's business development, it's analytical mindset, and etc. And I agree to some extent, but I think maybe these skills would be important on the top of the organization. Maybe, like for the decision-making persons who is having the vision. And of course, I understand and I agree that many of you may say that it's important to deliver vision to every level of the organization. That's a whole different story. And I would agree to that. But I think in places, and it would be very important to stick to something I said at the beginning, and that is possessing technical skills in the related areas. Because regarding the strategy that I mentioned that we work over with IFC, we're also considering internal structure of the investment promotion department. And there could be 2 various approaches towards that. One of those would be approaching it from the viewpoint of functionality, what we discussed today. Investment attraction, one thing. Investment, keeping the investments in the country and developing the investors database, it's another thing. Aftercare and policy advocacy. So these would be 3-4 functions based upon which you would structure the investment department. But there is also another way. And another way would be to focus on the priority sectors. So for instance, I don't know, you would be focusing on agriculture and food processing, one direction, chemical industry, another direction, tourism, real estate, another direction. So you would be selecting what is appropriate for your country, and you would be structuring department based upon this. And for this second type of structure, this technical expertise is becoming of utmost importance, because people would come from these areas. For this, of course, something you mentioned, Carolina, at the very beginning is becoming more important, and that's budgetary issues and financial issues, because without this, you cannot buy the best talent in the market. You cannot acquire people who can actually move the things forward, as opposed to, you know, people who do not have this expertise, because expertise comes with the cost. So I think on this, like I said, on the top level, it's very important to have what you mentioned, these 5 types of skills. But on the execution level, whereas it's very important to understand and share the vision, it's also very important to have the technical capabilities and skills, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Aditya, would you like to chip in? You're muted.
No, I agree with what Mr. Zorob had said. Ideally, I think what problems we face is no, I absolutely agree on those points that you mentioned on what makes the skill sets for relevant for an IT person. But I think in the Indian context, what is the issue here is that there's no IPA as a systematized body of knowledge, or there's no investment promotion experience that we get. So when we roll out job descriptions to people, we're only looking at complementary and supplementary skill sets. The other problem that arises now is that we have different sectors which requires different kind of skill sets. So basically, if I'm looking to hire for a sector that's electronics versus a sector that's textiles versus a sector that's chemicals, I have to kind of balance those different skill sets. That's another one. Another main problem that we face from an IPA point of view is that it is a contractual job. So we give contracts for 3 years, and every year the contract is renewed as per his or her performance. The problem that comes is we do not get quality talent here, because one reason is because a lot of and in the Indian context, people would not want to go for a government job which is on a contract basis. So we kind of lose out a lot of talent. That's also it. The other issue that we probably face is that we had a balance, because our investment promotion personnel, so they also have to interact with different relevant departments within different government agencies. They have to be sensitized on how to actually also talk to not just investors, but also to talk to different bureaucrats. So the language which they use for investors versus the language that they use for bureaucrats, it's an entire different ballgame. So we will have to also train them on how you can aggressively talk to investors, but at the same time, how do you humbly subserve yourself to bureaucracy and government, because in India, it's still an issue. I mean, you just can't walk into a bureaucrat and talk to him. It's still that culture where you have to wait outside and you will have to, yes sir, and yes Prime Minister. So that kind of that thing is still there. So it's very difficult for us. So we kind of do these training programs. Like David said, I agree. So we have an advisor. We have 2-3 advisory firms that are the big 4 and the big 3 that kind of advise us. So sometimes what we do is we ask the advisory to hire investment promotion professionals for us, because they kind of go and choose complementary and supplementary skill sets. So these are the problems that we face, because a lot of people, although they want to work with the government, they just realize that it's very difficult to just work with the government and work with the investors directly. To give you an example, I don't know if I should be saying this on this platform, but I was earlier with another investment promotion agency. It was so difficult because at different departments, departments that try to compete with us as an investment promotion agency. So what happens suddenly is that they want to take credit for bringing an investor to that particular area. They want to take credit for developing that particular zone. So it's not clearly demarked that way. So I see in Tamil Nadu, because the institutions are in sync. So it's a lot more better here. But I wouldn't say it's the same case with other states in India, because as all competence. The other aspect is that some of our investment promotion personnel who are getting paid, sometimes they get paid more than bureaucrats with 5 years of experience, because to get private talent, it's also an issue. So what happens is there's a lot of there's all these ego issues that come and say, listen, I've written the civil services exams and I've come here, but how are these guys earning more than us? And all these things, all the practical issues that face. So these are some of my sense, but I kind of broadly agree with you that those are the skill sets that we look at while we're hiring people. But we also look at empathy. We also look at how they kind of deal with different departments seamlessly. Are they willing to wait for 4 hours for an appointment with a bureaucrat or a minister? So those are the things that we also look at, because what is he going to do in that time frame? So I'm sorry, but these are my thoughts. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for introducing a really practical view of the challenges in terms of talent.
I mean,
Thank you.
But this is what happens actually, and it's very difficult because for us to hire people, it takes about 2 and 2.5 months, because it's a bureaucratic process. Because we don't want to while there's a lot of paperwork that's there, because tomorrow someone can file an RTI or a public interest action saying, how did you hire this kind of person? So the paperwork is going to be there. So right from doing 3-4 rounds of interview, that guy is already, it takes about 2.5 months. Which ideally, I think we should reduce that to 3 weeks to hire a particular person. But because government takes a lot of time, so I think that's also a challenge that we face, because we got to wait for 2.5 months to get talent on board. So these are practical issues that we face on a daily basis. So, yeah.
Thank you. Esteban, would you like to add a few lines to this?
Yeah, and I would like to speak about common training. But before that, I would like to say that the 5 skills, I fully agree with them. They are relevant in the organization. The most common way to taking things easy is to engage external expertise by consultant, or recruiting new people to new colleagues to the WAIPA or to the development agency. And the thing as well, which is very relevant, is to make continuous training and to try to help your colleagues. However, my impression and what I see is that it's easier the first thing, but the other 2 are more difficult. So engage people when you depend on public budget. In many of the countries following the crisis of 2008, 2009, the staff is frozen in many cases and it's not increasing. And as well, because of the size of the staff and the specialized knowledge that we have in every agency, it's very difficult to provide relevant training to those people working there. So, and there I will come with the advertisement. I think it's good to avoid fragmentation, and I'm going to my previous presentation, and to combine IPAs from different places. There are many good examples in national associations, but as well we should go even beyond, and I'm sure I know that WAIPA is doing things already for common training, and I think it's where we could provide relevant upskilling for the people working in IPA. So I think this is a way to go, because we need to have very specialized knowledge, and this is the way to get it. Otherwise, or specificities is quite difficult.
Thank you so much. David, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with the 5 areas. A couple of things. You mentioned political acumen. I think this is really important when you're dealing with executive level people. My experience on the West Coast, if I went in to see a senior executive of, Microsoft or Apple or whatever it was, they were much more interested talking to me as a diplomat about the big political picture of what was happening in the UK. What is on the mind of the Chancellor at Australia? What is tax policy likely to be, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be able to communicate at that level. They were very or much less interested in the granular economic development type statistics, that was done by people 3 or 4 levels behind them. This is the really crucial point, because for me, the key skill of account managers in IPAs is about listening very carefully to what it is the business is trying to achieve, and being very, very clear and very specific about providing tailored advice based around those particular drivers that the investor has identified in their business plan, that will help them make the best informed decision possible as quickly as possible, so saving them management time. And I think that really is the crucial point for me. And I think you can train that. And I think the mistake sometimes is to have people in IPAs who come from a particular sector who tend to want to say, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do it that way? Well, if I'm the investor, I don't need you to tell me what my business is. I want you to help understand what my business is and then help me deliver it. And I think there's a subtle difference there.
Great, thank you so much. So we are closing, we're coming closer to the end of our presentation, and I wanted to use this time to share some views about the future in the industry. We heard throughout the presentation that FDI is a story of transformation, and transformation is the natural answer to times of uncertainty, and we live in uncertain times. So transforming the industry is at the very core of how FDI would answer to the big challenges ahead and how we forge the future. Let me share 3 calls to action when it comes to capacity building for the future of FDI. Number 1 is go tech. Number 2 is go creative. And number 3 is go beyond. Let me explain. We have spoken already a lot about tech. Guidance explained how they introduce tech, but I want to include technology beyond the digital WAIPA, but on a very specific dimension of tech. In my experience as a consultant, I see that many professionals, great talent, are trapped in low value added work. In my perception, that sometimes is about 20 to 30% of the time of those employees. This is unacceptable, simply because we need the talent. And please use technology to set those professionals free from bureaucracy, from internal approvals, from long-winded work practices that are often not required. We need that talent, that time to think about the bigger picture and the big challenges ahead. So please use technology to set your colleagues free. Number 2 is about go creative when it comes to working with investor. And we need to look at going creative into 3 areas. First, go creative when it comes to services. I see a lot of irrelevant services in the industry, and please don't take offense of that, but client needs change. You have the investment cycle, you have expansion, contraction, you have startup to maturity, you have different stages in the investment attraction cycle, because you attracted, you landed, you grew, you have difficulties, you may close. Please adapt your services to these 3 cycles and review what's not relevant, because there's a lot of irrelevant services in the sense that clients said, this is not relevant to me. And this is of particular importance when it comes to post-investment. And I've noticed that there is a really serious topic around capacity development and aftercare, because aftercare is so much more than investment facilitation. Aftercare is and this is a definition, but really want to share it with you. It's a long-term value-creating engine that increases the return of investment across the FDI ecosystem. This means that we need to open a whole set of new type of conversations, meaning that we really need to have the talent with time to reflect and open up and explore the unexplored in order to really bring new type of FDI. Go creative when it comes to attracting a new FDI that will transform your host economy. This has to do with not only chasing the top big project where everybody's after, where the competition is a winner takes it all approach. We need to move away of that. And of course, bring that big project, but please look at the industry with fresh eyes. I want to see more of what I call FDI pathfinders who connect the dot differently. They are able to practice what I call the 3 T's. People who are able to talk, to trust each other and generate trust in the other, and to test where we need to play and with uncertain outcomes. We need to test new ways of generating value in the FDI industry. In fact, this new game is not about those ready-made projects that one location only seduces, but about conversations with uncertain outcomes that explore possibilities, that lead to opportunities, that convert into projects, that result into investment, that fuel partnerships, that generate ripple effects. My call is, yes, please bring that investment project, but don't settle for one project. Go for conversations that unleash ripple effect, and not only in your host economy, but globally. I will give you an example about that later on. A word of caution. This type of FDI requires leadership to engage differently with talent. How can we adopt a more entrepreneurial mindset in FDI so that failure is nothing more than one step closer to success? How do we create the right incentives and career path to attract, retain, and grow pathfinders? In the interviews for my book, it became evident that career progression in post-investment is a challenge that needs to be fixed if we are to capture long-term value for investors. How can leaders protect pathfinders so that they don't get burnt out, outcasted, or are fired in the process of driving change? This is a call to action. And the answer to this question cannot be left to change. There needs to come by design. My third call is about going beyond. We need to look at FDI in what I call the fringe FDI, seeking to drive investment to groups that have not benefited from FDI so far. Let me give you a few examples. How will FDI change the life of millions of people living in slums? How will FDI stop the next wave of massive migration that international organizations are already forecasting? How will FDI address desertification and water scarcity? We cannot stay complacent. Our joint global challenges are too big to ignore, are too big not to collaborate, are too big to continue with the same. On that note, let me share the work of Latvia, a country that understood that FDI was a tool for the transformation they want to see. They selected one SDG, namely number 6, clean water. They studied the water challenge in the European Union and correlated in what was happening in the Baltic Sea. They did a lot of consultations, applied the 3T, they talked, they trusted, they created trust, they tested. And of course, they saw what they had locally, the Baltic Sea. They finally came up with Mission C, where Latvia becomes a place for rapid innovation in fresh, clean water for everyday use, for where to leverage global science and technology. Latvia created a sandbox at the country level to test technology, revisited their whole policies in the different sectors to enable scientists to try rapid innovation processes, and levered EU money for that purpose. Mission C not only promotes FDI for Latvia, it gives them a role to play in the life of half of the world's population that does not have enough water. This is what I call transformational FDI. It requires us to connect the dots differently, to turn FDI into an engine to solve our joint challenges. For that to happen, we need to go beyond. The race to zero, demographic trends and global inequalities require us to up the game, to shift the understanding of the industry, and to go and let go of the winner takes it all approach and move towards a win for all mindset. This is how FDI will raise its game. Irrespective of the size of the challenge, we should not be afraid of the future, not if it's one that we create and invent. The context is right. Let's call the pathfinders to take the lead. Tech will set them free from low value added jobs. Good leaders will create the right environment for them to flourish. Creativity is what will they eat for breakfast. Just let them talk, let them trust, create trust, test, and test until they bring you the results of what transformational FDI is all about. Bold vision, partnership and collaboration will do the rest. I'm excited for what comes next. I know that FDI practitioners and policymakers are part of the solution. It is for us to go tech, go creative, and go beyond, because FDI, we know as it is today, it is outdated. Long live the FDI pathfinders. On that note, I would like to invite my fellow panelists. Maybe they want to have some comments. We have a few minutes, so over to any one of you who would like to chip in.
Carolina, David here. So I read a report recently from the British Parliament that talked about the percentage of or the percentage contribution to UK GDP from foreign direct investment, and I think it's around 10% or something like that. And it struck me that even though that looks like a small amount relative to the breadth of the economy, the point that you just made, I think, is a really important one, because what FDI does is bring with it innovation, new ideas, new skills, new ways of doing things, new technologies, etc., etc. So it can be boxed as 10% or 5% or whatever it is, but its actual sort of impact on an economy, wherever that is, whether it's developed or developing, is much greater. So I agree very much with the themes that you've highlighted, and I do think that FDI and continued FDI into any economy brings enormous benefits beyond just the pure GDP.
Esteban, you highlight.
Yeah, if I may, I would like, I'm clicking a lot of icons. So if I may, I would like to emphasize on what you said about the FDI as a pathfinder, a transformation tool, and connected with that, we should, and I like very much the example that you established, we should develop a vision for the territory. And this is important in order to gather all the actors which are inside of the territory and connect them with the FDI. So this is something that we should always to work hardly on that. So to have not only the political vision, let's say the public employees, we have to be open and humble and try to listen or citizens and help them to establish what they would like and how they see the opportunities of the territory for the future. And I fully agree with that, what you said. FDI is a very powerful tool to accomplish this vision. Thank you very much.
Exactly. We have a powerful tool in our hands, and sometimes I have this impression that we are underutilized it in order to address the big challenges. So this is my call for the industry. And I know that we had recently WAIPA elections. Take the chance to congratulate Invest India for the new presidency. And this is a really interesting time for that, because it brings new thinking into the industry, and it also brings developing countries into the scene in forging the future of the industry. So I'm very excited about the opportunities that come with that, and congratulations to Invest India for that. With that, we are coming to the end of our session. Thank you so much to my co-panelists for their time this morning and for sharing your experience with us and inspiring us to do more. Please, to the audience, take these experiences home, share them with your colleagues, and start creating value differently. Start talking, trusting, and testing to become an FDI pathfinder. We wish you the very best. Thank you so much. Goodbye.